Welcome to the best gambling show on the internet. This is the home of the money pick. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe. Wild card round Vegas spread picks. Firstly, let's get this money. An important week coming up. Secondly, thank you on the 29,000 subscribers. I will do my best to make you money this week. Let's get to the first game. We're going to Houston. We got the Los Angeles Chargers at the Houston Texans. Texans are +3. Texans winning the cover. This is one, when I saw the opening line, I get it. Everyone wanted to jump on the Chargers. I completely get it. I do think the Chargers have the better quarterback at this moment. Herbert has played and played well with very little options to support him. But in this game, I'm looking at both of the defenses. I think this is going to be a defensive football game. And that's why I'm giving the nod to the Texans. Now, I don't want anyone betting this. I'm sure a lot of the money will be flowing in the Chargers' direction. Like I said to start the analysis, I completely agree with that aspect and why people are doing it. But I also think the Texans just have more dogs on defense. This Chargers pass rush, man, if you look at it since week 7, week 8, this Chargers pass rush has been pretty much non-existent. A lot of their sacks, a lot of their pressures come from good coverage. They play a lot of zone. And I think Stroud will be able to make some plays. I'm not judging Stroud. I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater because they had a bad game against the Ravens. I didn't pick them against the Ravens. I'm not married to one game. We're looking at the full sample size. And to be honest, I know the Chargers finished the season strong with the win against the Broncos. We saw what they did to finish the season against the Las Vegas Raiders. But I haven't liked this finish to the Chargers season. And I certainly haven't liked the finish to the Texans season. So when I look at this game, man, I think we see a lot of pressure coming from this Houston Texans front four. Did they disappoint against the Chiefs? Yes, but I do think that's going to be a factor in this game. I do think this Texans secondary with Stingley will be able to lock down these options. And when you get to the playoffs, it is a lot different. We know the Texans don't have Tank Dell. We know Stephon Diggs isn't walking onto that field. But outside of McConkey, what reliable targets does Herbert have? We've seen him work absolute magic play after play this whole year. I'm just not seeing where it's coming from, and I absolutely love this Texans secondary. They've disappointed me this year. They've been inconsistent, but I think this is a game for them to take over. Now, when you talk about both teams' run game, Chargers started the year running it really well. We know Dobbins is back in the mix, but I'm not sure that's going to be something to lay your head upon when you get into this game against the Texans front seven. One thing the Texans have done well this year is use Joe Mixon, and I think Joe Mixon is the X factor in this game. I do think Herbert throws it better than Stroud in this matchup. No doubt about it. Let's be honest about it. Stroud is not playing with high confidence, and you do worry about him. But I do think Stroud will have more protection, and I do think he'll have more help from Joe Mixon. And I mentioned more protection. That's why I mentioned the Chargers pass rush being pedestrian the last 8-9 weeks. I do think Stroud will have a little bit more time than normal. He's been one of the most rushed passers under pressure this whole year. Give me the Texans in an upset, home field advantage. And one other thing about this game, you would lean towards Harbaugh in this coaching matchup. And I'm not going to make an argument why. I was the biggest D'Amico fan last year, and I understand the criticism. But I do worry about Harbaugh clenching up. Remember that Chiefs game? You remember the first 5 weeks of the year? They're at the 41-yard line of the opposing team, 4th and 2. They have one of the best field goal kickers in the league. They punt it. And I think Harbaugh could clench up, go to his conservative credentials, and I do think the Texans could take advantage of that. The Chargers need to be aggressive. They don't have an elite offense, so when they're down in the opposing team's territory, they're going to need to push the envelope, but will they? I also haven't liked the Chargers' red zone offense to finish this year. I think that's a factor. We saw that's how the Vikings lost against the Lions. Red zone offense, situational football. I'm a little bit more worried about the Chargers than you guys. Texans in an upset, not a great lean. Next game, we got the Green Bay Packers at the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles minus 4.5. Money, money, money. Money. Eagles winning the cover, make it a money pick. You worry about Hurts' status, though. I felt like when we came into this week, Tuesday morning, he would be cleared of the concussion. Obviously, we'll find out Wednesday. As long as he clears concussion protocol, I'm not seeing why we shouldn't slam this game. Now, there's a lot of factors, but before we go with the Eagles and how brilliant they've been at times this year, let's get to my criticism of the Packers the whole year. I don't think Jordan Love's played good football. I think he's been a turnover machine. I think he's been inaccurate, and they're not good in the short to intermediate plays. And you look at this Eagles secondary with no Christian Watson walking onto that field. You got Kraft and you got Reed, but is that someone you can really rely upon? I think the Eagles secondary is going to just completely suffocate this Packers offense. And the big part of this Packers offense, everyone wants to talk about Love this whole year. They talk about Love. The reason why this Packers offense has been successful at times is Josh Jacobs. Look at every good drive they've had this year. 90% of their good drives that result in 6-7 points. They are Josh Jacobs dominant, and I see this young Eagles defensive line getting better by the second. Jordan Davis, Sweat. I think the Eagles can lock that down. I think they can take risks. I think they can throw an 8-man in the box and let Jordan Love beat them. Jordan Love also has that hand injury. Now, I know we're talking about Hurts concussion, and that's worrisome. But I would rather put I'd rather put our bets on Hurts being fully healthy to go than Jordan Love, given the situation, given the factors. And this Packers offensive line, it's stressed out LaFleur this year, and it stressed me out because they haven't reached the heights they should have. So I think the Eagles have the better defense and are the more physical team. Now let's get to the other side. You talk about Saquon Barkley, and you talk about this new wage NFL where you really want to throw it. Where throwing it obviously is the best way. But at a certain point, can we just admit that Saquon Barkley is a tsunami? It's something you can't prepare for. You can build the dam, you can build the levee, but the tsunami comes in. It's just relentless, and it keeps pounding you and pounding you. And that's what we're going to see out of the Philadelphia Eagles. People are going to say, Lawson, they're the worst first quarter team in the league. Well, yeah, but the run game beats you down after time. Would I like to see a better scripted offense from Kellen Moore and Sirianni? Of course. But this is a team that will wear you down, and once it gets to 5 minutes in the third quarter, you start seeing them take over and completely dominate and put the opposition on the ground, and they go for the jugular. That's one thing I like about Sirianni when laying points. You guys wanted him fired. I supported him after he yelled at the fans because, honestly, Philly fans are irrational, and this hasn't been a good home field advantage this year, but I think it will be when this game takes place. Philly is a tough place to go in the playoffs, and I'm not sure this Packers team is war ready, stable enough to deal with the conditions and also deal with the raft that Philadelphia's offense will put forth. Here's another thing that I've been complaining about the Packers all year. I do like their run fits. They don't have a great pass rush. I think they're a below average pass rush, but we can give them an average grade there. My problem isn't their front seven. My problem is their secondary, and they haven't covered anyone the whole year. And you got Jair Alexander. He's going to miss this game. I know Hurts hasn't been the most accurate guy this year. I know this hasn't been a vintage Jalen Hurts year. Of course, it hasn't. But when you got dogs like A.J. Brown who can get open and the Packers not covering this whole year, I think the Eagles can really take advantage of that, and I would not be surprised. I mentioned the word tsunami for a reason. This game will start close. People holding Eagles tickets will get nervous, but I do think the tsunami comes, and there's not much you can prepare for. I see an Eagles onslaught coming. Let's get this money. Eagles money pick -4.5. When I looked at this game on the opening line show, I thought we were going to get Eagles -6.5, Eagles -7. I've been waiting to get against the Packers this whole year. We did it with the Vikings. We're going to do it again. Eagles winning the cover. Make it a damn money pick. Next game, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers. Russell. At the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens -10. Ravens winning the cover, but this might be the most frustrating line I got this whole year. I've been waiting for this line to come in. I was itching while I watched my Vikings get completely decimated against the Lions. I wanted to see what the line would be. We get to 10, and I've been waiting to get against the Steelers the whole year. I've been telling you guys they stink for the last 10 weeks. Did I look stupid at times? Of course I did. This is the most humbling profession in the world, betting on the NFL to pay your bills. But let's get to the matchups in this game. I think there's a possibility the Ravens blow them away. And whenever you talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, you talk about Mike Tomlin. So I get it. A lot of people will say Steelers cover. And I completely agree with the logic because Tomlin, outside of Reed, outside of the Belichicks, is there another guy at his level coaching in America at this point? I don't think so. But I've been telling you guys all year, this Steelers defense is vulnerable. I don't like their secondary outside of Joey Porter Jr. And this pass rush can be contained. I know everyone's going to give me the excuse he's doubled. He's getting chipped every play. But this hasn't been a vintage TJ Watt year. We even saw the Jets contain him in a game. And we've seen plenty of teams contain him. It's more the other options like Highsmith and their third string defensive end who are getting in the mix and getting the pressure. But I think this is going to be a Ravens performance where they run the ball. This is another weakness of the Steelers defense. I'm not saying they're a bad run defense. They're a pretty good run defense, but we've seen teams pound them this year and then hit them with the play action. And I think that's going to be the recipe. That's going to be the MO of the Ravens offense. And when you talk about offenses in this league, yes, you don't like laying 10 points, but remember the Denver game when we laid it with the Ravens. There's some teams I trust laying points with, and the Ravens are one of those teams. Lions are another team you guys like laying points with. It's because they go for the jugular and they have just an insane amount of explosive plays. And that's one thing the Steelers offense, let's get to the Steelers offense. They've been relying on explosive plays. They've been relying on plays, deep balls, prayer deep balls that I have been saying all year are way too high variance to bet on. And we're seeing George Pickens completely check out. And we're seeing Russell Wilson start to show his ass. At a certain point in this league, you need to work the short and intermediate routes. Russell Wilson hasn't done that at all. And honestly, he's getting worse. And we saw the Steelers try to come out against the Bengals and run the ball, get smash mouth, prepare for football. And that offensive line just isn't up to snub. The offensive line has been an issue the whole year. They can't run block. They can't pass block. That right side is really, really vulnerable when they're in their pass fits, and I think that's where the Ravens defense completely clamps down on them. Also, let's talk about the Ravens defense. I've been telling you guys the last 8 weeks, we've seen slight improvement. Marlon Humphreys has had his best year. We're seeing Wiggins step up in the secondary. I'm not seeing a way forward for the Steelers other than Mike Tomlin magic, Mike Tomlin voodoo. If you want to put your hard-earned money on that, that's up to me. We know the history before. That's up to you. We know the history of these teams. Mike Tomlin suffocates and outcoaches opposition. I just feel like he's reached his limit. It is the end of the line. Let's be honest. There's only so much lipstick you can put on the proverbial pig, and I think they reached their limit with Russell Wilson. Honestly, if I was advising the Steelers going into this game, if I was head coach, I would put Justin Fields in, and I would try to run the read option. I would try to add another body just to give this front seven of the Ravens something to think about. With it stands with Russell Wilson, with his mobility decreasing as his age increases, I just don't see that happening, and I don't see the Steelers running the ball, and the Ravens have been very good in run fits the whole year. Give me the better quarterback. Give me the better team. Give me the better running back. I'm a little bit nervous about Zay's injury, looking like he will miss the game. That's why I'm not making it a money pick. Ravens -10. Next game, we got the Denver Broncos at the Buffalo Bills. Bills -8.5. Bills winning the cover. This is one you worry about. Because when you talk about the Broncos, you talk about Sean Payton, but I also want to give Vance Joseph his flowers. He's been absolutely phenomenal this year, but we are starting to see the Broncos show their ass a little bit the last 6-7 weeks. And this is another team, kind of like the Steelers, I just haven't been high on. But credit to both of these teams getting to the playoffs and being very competitive when the talent level says they shouldn't. I'm worried about the Broncos' defense. I'm worried about them in man-to-man coverage. I think they're going to go a lot of man-to-man. And one thing that has saved the secondary is Riley Moss coming back and Surtain being a stud. But outside of that, there's a lot of marginal players here that can't cover. Now, you do mention the pressure. The strength of this Denver defense is getting pressure, getting relentless pressure, and just completely hitting and destroying the quarterback's rhythm. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Josh Allen is going to be flustered under pressure. And honestly, slanging blitzes at Josh Allen is counterproductive because we know how elusive he is, and we know these Bills wide receivers, they don't have a dog at wide receiver. Shakur's played good this year, but let's be honest, there are no dogs. There are no true difference makers at wide receiver. So you send blitzes at Josh Allen, he eludes the blitz, and he rolls to his right, and these receivers get 5, 6, 7 seconds to create separation, and that's when you see the gigantic plays from the Buffalo Bills. Now, I do think the Broncos' defense will get stops. I do think the Bills have a lot of vulnerabilities, but outside of that, offensively, I'm not seeing too many vulnerabilities. I also think the Bills will be able to run the ball this game. This is a big matchup. If the Bills can run the ball, they're going to do what they want on offense. This Broncos team has been pretty good against the run all year, but I am seeing some favorable matchups, and I do wonder how aggressive Vance Joseph gets. Is he going to try to stop the run, or is he going to put two safeties back and say, listen, we'll give up the run. We're going to try to focus on Josh Allen and these targets for the Bills. Either way, I just think this is going to be too much Bills offense on the field. Now let's get to the other side. Here's the big reason why I'm going Bills. What can you do against the Bills defense? What do they want you to do? They want you to run the ball. They put their two safeties really far back. They have light boxes, and they want you to run the ball. I'm not sure the Broncos can. When have they ran the ball this year other than Bo Nix scrambling and making great plays? I don't think the Broncos are going to be able to run the ball. And I do think we see a little bit of an ignite mode from the Bills defense. And can I ask you a question? Sean Payton has been brilliant, but how far can he drag this team? How far can he drag a team with Mims, Val, Lil Jordan Humphrey as periphery receivers? How long can he drag this team? How long can he drag a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix that is getting better, but is limited. I'm just not seeing, if the Bills shut down Cortland Sutton, how the Broncos are going to be able to make consistent plays. I also think this is an underrated atmosphere. The Broncos have played their best offense, have looked their best when they're at home in Mile High. They're going to Ralph Wilson Stadium. It's going to be raucous, and I'm not sure the Broncos are going to be able to do it. Here's the last issue I have with the Broncos offense. Throughout the whole year, they've gotten better the last 5 weeks with this, but throughout the whole year, the Broncos offensive line has been like top 5, top 6 in giving up quick pressures. I think Von Miller, Rousseau have a stake in this game. We haven't seen this Bills pass rush reach the heights they should on paper, but I do think this Bills defensive line dominates the Broncos offensive line. If the Broncos can run it, this will be a very, very shaky game for the Bills. I just don't see them doing that. Give me the Bills minus 8.5 winning cover. Next game, we got the Washington no-names at the Tampa Bay Bucs. Bucs minus 3. Money, money, money. Money. Which side do you think I'm going? I think you're going to be surprised by this one. Bucs winning the cover. Make it a money pick. It pains me I have to do this, and this is one I needed to think about all day yesterday. I don't do this lightly because everyone's probably surprised because I did kind of start the Commanders bandwagon around week 3. I love Jaden Daniels. I love what this Commanders offense is capable of doing, but I think this is a really bad matchup for them, and I'll explain why. I haven't liked the way the Commanders ended this season, and I'm not talking about Week 18 against the Cowboys. They have shown flaws and things that have been worrying for me. Throughout the whole year, outside of Terry McLaurin, a lot of these wide receivers just haven't been good enough. They haven't been good enough, and you could look at Zacchaeus dropping that wide-open touchdown pass Week 18 against the Cowboys. But I don't trust these wide receivers to get separation, and that's fine. Daniels can buy a lot of time, and he can make plays down the field by scrambling, and you still got Terry. But here's another issue that I'm worried about. I'm worried about their run game. And I know we're going to have Daniels running a lot of read option. That's going to confuse the Bucs front seven a lot more than other matchups. But I've seen this Commanders run game slowly tailor off. I've seen this Commanders offensive line slowly tailor off. Look at their 2 matchups with Dallas. They got their ass kicked by Dallas's defensive line. And the Bucs defense is obviously an extremely vulnerable entity. You can take advantage of them. They can't cover anyone. But one thing the Bucs defense does is stop the run. And I do think they'll limit the Commanders' run game. Like, I would bet the over for Daniels' rushing yards. But for Robinson, for Eckler, I'm worried about them this game. And Cliff Kingsbury is going to have to coach the game of his life. Because let's be honest, the last 6-7 weeks, the play calling, the magic, the good sets have just completely dried up. And we're starting to see this offense look more vulnerable and look less explosive. I think the Bucs defense has the advantage in this game when you talk about the 2 defenses. Now let's get to the other side of the ball. Now, I got to say, guys, I was wrong. I remember going into that Philadelphia Eagles game, I was hyping up the Commanders' defense, saying they are getting better. The run fits are getting better. The secondary is better than you think. I do think the secondary is better than you guys think. And Lattimore will be in that game Sunday when this takes place, Sunday night. So I do think maybe I'm a little bit right about the secondary, but we're seeing the front seven not get a lot of pressure the last 7-8 weeks. And that's one thing that is different than earlier in the year. And we know going into this playoffs in this wild card round, one team has struggled to stop the run, and it's the Commanders, and I'm not sure they're going to be able to bandage that up. I'm not sure what it is, scheme, personnel, but they haven't been able to stop the run with like Daron Payne, Wagner, Fowler, really good players up front. So I do think the Bucs are going to run it. One thing the Bucs have is a top top 5 offensive line. One thing the Bucs have been is a top 7 offense this whole year. If the Bucs can run the ball and really physically lay into this Commanders front 7, I think that will open things up for Baker Mayfield. And I mentioned McLaurin and I mentioned Zacchaeus to prove that the Bucs have a lot more targets. And I know Godwin's not walking onto that field, but I do think this Bucs offense gives me a little bit more confidence going into this game. It is a money pick. I think the Bucs move the ball better than the Commanders. You worry about the turnovers from Baker Mayfield. One thing Daniels does, he protects the ball and he makes smart decisions. I'm just not seeing what's going to get going for them if Brian Robinson doesn't have a big game. And I believe the Buccaneers will stop the run. And here's another thing. Here's the only thing that worries me about this Bucs money pick. I think Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator, has an advantage over Cliff Kingsbury, even though I've liked the work of both of these men this year. But I am worried about Todd Bowles. I am worried about his game management. I am worried about his preparation. Dan Quinn has brought vibes. He's brought gusto. And he's also brought a very, very attacking scheme. You got to attack Baker Mayfield, but that's going to leave holes in the back end. Like I said, the only thing that's stopping me from really, really getting excited about this money pick is Todd Bowles. Everything to do with that man. Next game, Monday Night Wildcard. We got the Minnesota Vikings at the Los Angeles Rams. Vikings winning. Vikings -1.5. Vikings winning the cover. Yeah, man. This is a tough one. And we have to remember that the Vikings were within the 5-yard line 4 times against the Lions. So we don't want to get too dramatic about it. But one thing I am getting dramatic about, and one reason the Vikings to win in the cover is not a money pick, is I worry about Darnold. But I'm also worried about Matt Stafford. But if you gave me a choice between the two, we would all take Matt Stafford. Listen, man, I'm worried about this Rams offense. And I felt like they were moving the ball better with Jimmy G and the backups than they moved the ball the last 6-7 weeks. Let's remember that what they did against the Jets, one of the worst defenses in the league, in a must-win game. Let's remember how the Rams have finished this year. Let's remember that game that went to overtime against the Seahawks. There's been a lot of discombobulated performances from the Rams offense, and I do think they are lacking rhythm. And the Rams defense has really saved their season. So we need to start there when we talk about this game. The reason why I like the Vikings more is because even with me giving credit to the Rams defense, I do think this Vikings defense is the better unit. I do think they played really well against Detroit, and the game flow worked against them. There's only so many mistakes, so many times you go for it on 4th down, and you leave your defense stranded. So I do think we see a Minnesota defense that will be up for the game, and I do think they can cause problems for the Los Angeles Rams. And I was excited about the Rams the whole year this year, and we've won a lot of money on them. Like, we know when to bet them. This is a week where I just don't think I can bet them. I wouldn't be able to lay money on them. I thought once they got Nakua, Cooper Kupp, Williams, and the offensive line healthy, this offense would take off and be a top 5 offense in the league. We just haven't seen it. We've seen an offense that lacks rhythm. At times, they're not able to get the run game going. And if the Vikings prove one thing against the Lions in that first half, the Vikings can stop the run. And I think they stop the run and they make Matt Stafford beat them. I do think this is going to be an ugly game. I do think Sam Darnold is the reason why you can't bet the Vikings. Look at what he did against Detroit. It was absolutely pathetic. And you do see him clenching up. You do see him getting nervous. But I do think the Vikings offensive line will have success in this game. I do think that helps the Vikings. So when you look at both of these teams, I do agree with this spread. I think it's going to be close. This isn't one to bet the Vikings. Give me the Vikings to win in the cover with the -1.5. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe. The best gambling show on the internet. Slam that like button. I'll go more in depth to the Vikings Rams because I don't do cuts on the videos. I kind of ran out of steam there. So much to say about these games. Let's have fun this week. Let's bet some totals this week. We've been really good this year on the totals. Let's bet everything. Hit the like button, share the videos. Have a great wild card week.